recording audio. Go. Thank you very much.
Okay, so as a reminder, we are recording this and live streaming right now. I guess we can call the meeting to order. Thank you everybody for attending tonight. I know we're a little sparsely attended tonight, but I believe that there's some competing meetings going on. So here we sit. There's nobody here for public comments. So shall we move on to the subcommittee reports? Is there anybody here to give a subcommittee report, Stefan?
Sorry, I was listening to the playback for a second.
Oh,
Make sure it was okay. I heard my name, but I didn't know what you said.
I didn't know if you, do you have you're chair of a subcommittee,
I
correct?
am, yes,
Okay.
and I can pull that up in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Well, what else do you have, just in case Brian can make it?
What was that?
Sorry.
It's okay.
We will wait on CIF just in case Brian can make it.
Sure.
And
Yeah, actually, why don't-
I can finish eating.
Yeah, absolutely. Please finish eating.
Yeah, actually, why don't we, if possible, did Craig said he was going to be able to join?
Craig isn't here tonight. He's
Craig,
in
okay.
California.
And no, Craig didn't say he was going to, because Craig would never say anything like that.
This is being recorded.
It's okay. Everything I say, I'll stand by.
Oh, I know that. I know that. Because what I'm really eager to get to is to discuss our field trip.
Well,
We'll talk about that now.
Yeah, I think it's not too
Okay.
early to
And we
talk
also
about that, I guess, right?
So, who wants to start on our field trip? Okay, so we went to the MBTA test center for the new fare collection and the new gates, thank you. And they had a pretty good setup there, and they also had in a separate room people with mobility issues that were testing how they worked for them. And this isn't funny, but it was kind of funny at the time, which was unfortunately the prototypes that we were testing stopped working about the third pass through. So that was unfortunate.
But they've done like some kind of, not upgrade, but they've done something, you know, that day.
The vendor had been there that
Yeah,
day.
yeah, so it wasn't like, you know, it had been working normally, you know, and then stopped. It was more like they had done something and.
Okay, because I thought that people had been there earlier in the day also doing it. I thought there was a group just before us. But in any event, there, I think what was nice was we really did try to use these products, and we really did try to see how they would work, and that they were, the people around us were very interested in actually getting our feedback. It wasn't the, yeah, but this is the way it was. There was a very strong, I thought you were in California.
I was yesterday.
Okay, today you're batting?
I am.
Did you go to the game?
I'm going to the game.
Oh.
So I'm making my stopover on the way to the game.
Okay.
This is why when we switched to Tuesdays a couple of years ago, I objected. So I,
Oh,
a couple
that's
of
what
Tuesday
you
Red
said.
Sox games a year.
Okay.
We've got the same package for 12 years, and you can't miss it. 50
You know what
years.
happened this afternoon?
I don't, I've been so hands down.
What happened?
They played a game this afternoon.
It
Oh.
was a double hitter, it was a little, yeah, I think it rained out yesterday.
Whatever.
Okay. So we were talking about our field trip, and so the only comment I was making was that they really were interested in our feedback, both as to how the kiosk where you're going to be obtaining your new Charlie card or whatever works, and how we found the gates to be working. And I don't know if anybody wants to know, that I sort of set the stage, wants to talk about their observations that day. There were a lot of smart people in the room making a lot of smart observations.
Anything negative?
Well, I think for the most part, just knowing that we couldn't test them as much as I would have liked. There were some things with like sight lines, maybe, like where you could see things and whether things were visible, I think were a problem. And they definitely listened to us both on how sort of the kiosk worked. If you were taller than you or I, you couldn't really see everything on the screen. Stefan had some good comments on where things were, but whether or not you could go into the, where the placement of sort of the lighted signage was a little difficult in some places. I think that,
Is it just flat?
Yeah, I'll talk about that, because actually, the first thing that jumped out for me as a visual element was the go or don't go indicators, which are pretty much in the same location, front of the gate to the right of where you go in. The current ones from Scheich Bachmann have either a green arrow pointing in if you're able to go through, or they have the universal red circle with a white stripe through it for do not enter, if it's like either programmed as an exit only or if it's out of service. The current ones that we saw, if it was out of service or a set for somebody to come through, or either programmed as a exit only, the symbol was a big red X, but I felt that the red X was too broadly drawn, and unless you were far away from it, it really just looked like a big red wall. In other words, if you were within maybe an arm's reach of it, you saw red, and that would be good if you're not colorblind.
Right.
But the shape of the X, when you were relatively close to it, just didn't read like an X. And it seemed like, I don't want to toot my horn, but it seemed like that was something that I called out that they hadn't heard before. They were like, oh.
yeah, and then it made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The ratio of the thickness, the fatness of the X was off.
Exactly. It was a.
No, it wasn't the ratio of it, it was that they were using red LEDs, and the spacing of them was wide enough that when you were close, it looked like a bunch of red LEDs rather than
The shape of the X. Yeah, I think that's what you were saying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In other words, the overall size of it, the thickness of the lines making the X were too broad relative to the overall size. So there should be more LEDs closer packed with a tighter defined X shape, or just fewer of the LEDs lit up. I mean, again, it wouldn't really be an issue unless it was somebody that was colorblind, and they would see a big blob.
No, it's good to do both.
Yeah.
To have a symbol that's obvious and a color that's obvious, to reinforce both.
Yeah, but I'll also echo what you were saying about the viewing angles of some of the display screens were not so great. I don't know if they had not applied the same kind of anti-glare coating also, but the screens that were on the turnstile, or I guess gates, for lack of a better term, there's no turning part of it. The screens on the gates were very reflective, and in the test lab, there was a light almost directly over it, and when you approached it, the reflection from the overhead light in that office space made it so that you get this big glare off of it. They were like, oh, well, it's probably not going to be like that out in the stations. And I'm thinking, how do you know? There could be a light overhead. The ones that we have, the Scheich Bachmann ones, I recall being very readable from lots of
Very
angles.
readable, yeah.
Yeah, but on the positive though, there was some kind of an anti-glare coating on the fare vending machine screen.
But that was hard to see if you were tall.
Yes, the angle was not great, but at least it didn't reflect ambient light off of it. It wasn't a shiny screen, it had like an anti-glare coating, but yeah, you're right, it was still
I could see
angled.
everything on it, but anybody
Yeah.
taller couldn't see the whole screen. I will tell you, they're nice and wide.
Yes.
Getting through there is nice and wide. Very nice. Even the ones that are not for accessibility were very wide. They have all these little sensors so that if you're going through with your service dog, the service dog won't trip it to read as two people piggybacking on each other, which I thought was very sweet.
How about children? Apparently you ride free up until you're 12. I don't know how.
We started to talk about that, but I may have wandered away during that part of the discussion, so I'll have to see if anybody can remember what they said about that.
I don't remember anything about the aspect of the children specifically, but I know that the number of sensors was something that they indicated would be helpful in tracking Yeah, like you said, like somebody's got a mobility assistant dog, similar things.
Like that, when I'm thinking 12-year-olds, some 12-year-olds are really tall.
Mhm.
They could look like anyway, I'll ask it whenever they
Do you
have.
remember anything from it?
The two things that I recall about that were, one, they weren't trying to use the gates to like close to keep people out. Like they weren't trying to use them as a fine-grained, fair enforcement
Right.
tool. And in fact, the accessible ones, the gate doors moved fairly slowly, and they were quite wide. Steph and I could walk two abreast through it.
Yes, thank you for reminding me, yeah.
So that was one thing, and the other thing was, we did talk some about the enforcement, and they had the machine that they would use to check, they had a prototype of the machine they would use to check people's payments.
That the inspectors would carry,
Yes.
a little device.
And so, for a 12-year-old, they presumably check or ask their age and handle it however their policy will work. But as far as the gates, I don't think, the impression I got was that they weren't counting on the gates to enforce that. And that they, like you'd said, they programmed the gates to sense things like luggage, strollers, assistant animals and things like that to allow people through as opposed to close the gates on people.
Yeah, another illustration of how the gates aren't as important in the new system for preventing variation as they are in the current system is they might change it, but there's a significant gap between the bottom of the
Yeah.
movable gate part and the floor. I mean, enough of a gap where it would not be hard at all for even a full-grown person to just crawl right under the gate. Now, there's sensors all the way underneath. I think the lowest sensor is maybe
It said
an
4
inch or
inches. It said 4 inches.
Oh, okay. It seemed like it was even lower than that to me, but, I mean, clearly, somebody trying to crawl under would trigger the mechanism, and presumably that would be on video, but they said to us that they were talking to the vendor about having gates that went further down. The way the gates are now is nice because when they're open, there's really nothing obstructing the flow. So basically, the wall of the metal wall containing the electronics on either side is how do I describe this? Here's where a photo would be worth 1,000 words. The gates basically fold back so that the gates themselves in the open position are essentially recessed, as opposed to the gates being hinged with the hinge point further out. It's hard, I don't know if that makes any sense, but in order for them to extend the gate lower or all the way down to the ground, they wouldn't be able to have the hinge point recessed like that.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. And speaking of the gates, one thing that was very good and I liked very much, and I was really happy to see this, was the motor unit, the actual drive mechanism for the gate is right on top and easily accessible, and more importantly, that makes it easy to service. That was the first thing that I saw that struck me when I walked in there was, oh my gosh, it's like a big mushroom on top of a big hinge, and the motor mechanism essentially has a cover on top. And I asked them to verify what I was thinking. They said, yeah, that's the motor drive. And I said, well, it looks like you just pop a little cover off and you can pull the motor out to replace it. And they said basically, yeah, that's it. It's designed to be easy to service, and that's great. I mean, I think the motor mechanism, the current ones, is really embedded deep inside and hard to get at. Actually, I think they said it was, yeah, there's really nothing about the current nothing about the current gates, which is easy to service. So having the motor mechanism up on top on the new ones, big improvement in serviceability, which will mean less gates out of service, which would mean less people just walking through without paying.
I love that you described it as a giant mushroom. I can't get the image of
Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers, the red and polka dot mushrooms sitting at the top.
That's
of
exactly
these
how
gates.
it was.
Yep. Yep.
I think just going back to the fear evasion point, I think this
Marijuana
is
is legal now.
Yeah, it is. Big giant mushrooms not far behind.
I think we've always struggled from
being in the perspective of the rider, right, and trying to represent the rider here, I think we always struggle with the fare evasion question, because we see both sides of it, at least I've always had, I don't want to speak for everybody. One side of it is, we want the experience with the rider to be as unencumbered as possible. We want it to be friendly, we don't want chain link on top of these gates, we want it to be a welcoming, easy, and we want to speed through it, right? There's nothing worse than being in a crowded station and you're just, I will be 3 hours, I'm gonna be walking back, I was getting on at Kenmore after a Red Sox game. There's a wait to go through the gates, so so throughput's very important to me, that's one side of it. But I think we also, as riders, riders who pay our fare and understand the bodies behind the system, and they can use every dollar that they can, want to find ways to enforce fare enforcement. So it's a balance, right? It's finding that right of how do you make something as easy to use and speed up throughput as possible, but also make sure that people aren't taking advantage of this.
Well, I think the Green Line was going to provided a good example of that. On the Green Line cars, all the doors will open when you're above ground, well, no matter what. And when you pay your fare above ground, there will be 2 sensors at each door on either side. So with the exception of the door that's opposite where the driver is, because for them to put a second one in would mean it's like in somebody's face.
Yeah.
So with the exception of that one door, all the other doors will have 2 tap-on places. And you tap on, and then the inspector will have their handheld thing that Carl was discussing, and can go up and just have them, tap their card or whatever and see if they paid their fare.
Yeah.
And then there's also a way that right in there, they can issue a ticket to the person for not.
To me, it sounds like we're shifting towards a more European-like system, where it's slightly more based on your honor, but we're going to control it and enforce it through, I think, inspections. Yeah. It's not like we're making the system up, it's worked for years somewhere else. It'd be interesting, cultures different. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works.
And then it's very hard to cancel out if you swipe somebody's card and they hadn't paid, that it's very hard, so the inspectors can't just decide not to give somebody a ticket. That it's hard to get through. They said, so if it's their friends, but I think you wouldn't swipe your friends to start with.
Across town, western New York, I don't know which one, my son uses it, or his daughter uses it actually. They have inspectors, I should email them and find out how that's working. So you have to have payment, somebody comes around. So
I think it's the same thing on the buses.
I'm sorry?
I think we're gonna have the same thing on our buses, right? What they saying?
So it's actually in use, at least in one place in the United States. I don't know that.
I'm sure it is.
It's also Seattle.
Seattle.
Seattle's on their light rail. I mean, the test is gonna be how do you do this during rush? And, so how do you do the inspection during rush when the trains are jammed?
And I think historically, though, we've always been, not everywhere in the system, but there are plenty of examples of during rush hour or during special events that accept it to remain saying, we're losing fares. It is what it is. It's not, or we're not going to inspect.
Other examples doing big occasions that aren't. I'm not aware of situations where we just open the gates during rush hour.
I've seen it on, years ago, the marathon, though, I just get on.
That's a special occasion though.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it doing like everyday, rush hour use.
Green Line inbound above ground.
It's
treated that way.
It's like right above ground.
And sometimes the bus driver, when it's
Occasionally buses
slow
will
in
do
the
it.
back door, hopefully people have passes, but
I think one thing that I forgot to ask was whether the ASC equipment on Green Line or bus would have any location awareness so that you could later implement distance-based fares on those modes. I think at the moment, the only plan up front to do distance-based fares is on commuter rail, where it obviously is done now.
I
But-
thought they discussed that a little bit, saying that they didn't want to have that kind of impact on people
Mhm.
that were taking the, traditional subway. That they didn't want to have, that they wanted, I thought for some reason I heard.
Well, you mentioned the equity concern.
Right.
Well, those deals that the system is set up so that they could do tap out, right, if they wanted
Right.
to, I should say the system would have that capability. It's not set up that way now, but I think it would have the capability of doing a tap out.
Yeah, but I think the only thing I mentioned was that the tap out would be sort of encouraged somehow, but only for the purposes of data collection. But it sounded like, because I remember somebody saying, oh yeah, in a perfect world, we would have tap on, tap off for every mode so that we would have the trip data. Because we would love to have the trip data for everybody. But I don't recall them actually saying that they would be able to correlate a tap on or a tap off to the location. Obviously you could interpolate that from the time.
I thought they were building the whole thing with flexibility at launch. They're not going to destroy the apple cart, but I thought the intention was always to build it with an eye towards if they ever wanted to go with a distance-based, but theoretically distance-based ride on subways.
Okay.
We'll see about. It may be more political than anything else, but they could do that as opposed to
Yeah.
anything else.
Well, I'm talking about the.
Theoretically, you could simplistically do it if you really just want to do the. You could do the part, you just put rings around the city if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And say, okay, you have on a ring tree, it's.
Well, it used to be that way.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to.
You have to
get
pay
kicked out.
again to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think
Now, I would, you create it's 1.5 fares to enter a ring tree. With the digital technology, you can do it different ways.
Am I right that it was only ever
Or tap out.
Riverside and a couple stations near Riverside and Braintree and the one in from Braintree? I think it was like less, like, it was like, I can count on one hand the number of stations that have ever, on rapid transit that have ever had a higher fare. Am I right about
But
that?
don't you know the Charlie song? You have to,
Right, well, yeah.
you have to pay to get off the JP.
That's not really important for me now, but,
Hey, well, here's your question. Would you be willing to take a higher fare to get your Blue Line in?
yes. And I think a lot of people would as well.
One thing that was interesting is that there will be and maybe people knew this, but it sunk in for me for the first time, was that there's going to be a cost associated with getting your Charlie card, and it will be up to $5. And that makes it sort of an expensive thing, as people, our group was pointing out, I don't remember who it was, but that if you're here for the weekend and you have 4 kids, well, that's $20 just to ride the T before you even get any fare if they're $5 each. So if you're visiting, you still have to pay whatever that cost is to get the card. So, and they have approval to charge up to $5 for that plastic card.
But you can't use that card for all your kids, the same card, just.
Well, no, and that came up.